You said something earlier, Alzay, about you didn't want the scope of the project to fix too many things.
Yeah,
Why wouldn't you?
right, right. That's a leading question because he knows I got a whole thing about that. Right. Thank you, Jason.
We're here for another episode of the Cold Star Project, the podcast about the challenges of scaling that agency owners, etc., technologists, and that don't really know about and then run into and fall over. And I would rather that you know about these things beforehand so that you don't get hurt by them. My guest today is someone I've been following for, I don't know, I guess about a year and a half, something like that. I was doing some Googling or YouTube searching on scaling businesses and moving faster and that. And I came up with Alzay Calhoun's Coveted Consultant channel. And he has a great series of videos there, which you should go watch, on how to productize your business and make them more efficient. So I'm super happy to have Alzay on the show because when I first asked him, he didn't know who I was. And that was quite a while ago. And since then, he started a group and did a bunch of wonderful Facebook Lives, and we've gotten to know each other a little bit. So thanks for being here, Alzay.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me.
So I guess let's start with what happened. What did you see out there in the marketplace as in your coveted consultant role that led you to, oh my goodness, we need to do things differently?
Okay. Yeah. All right. So I think first is it happened to me. So I'm sensitive to it because it happened to me. And so what is it? It is this sense of the business being overwhelming. Is the sense of being well-intentioned, being talented, being profitable, but the business itself being overwhelming. And so what do I do about that? The very short story is, because I've sold services a lot of different ways, but the very short story is I was selling services, and I had kind of niched into marketing services and being an agency. I was doing done-for-you marketing services. And I was selling everything I knew how to do, whether it was video, written, text, sequences, email, landing pages, content upgrades, you name it, I was delivering it. I was doing everything I knew how to do, and I was selling it every way possible. And so I was selling via webinar. I was selling via video. I was selling via phone. I was selling via a cold email. I was selling via warm email. I was selling via Twitter and Facebook. I was selling. I mean, so just imagine what's it called? The exponent, right? You're doing 5 things, 5 different ways.
Right.
Managing
the
those.
Factorial. Suddenly.
Thank you. The factorial. The factorial.
Yeah.
It's impossible to manage. So that thing just kind of crumbled onto me. So I'm hyper aware of that, if you will. And what happened to me as I was working with other people is even in the area of just being a consultant, kind of doing the done for you stuff, is they were as crazy as I was. Looking into their business, I'm seeing the mirror. You're nuts too. This is crazy. This is wild. It's not fair to me. It's not fair to you. It's not fair to those who you serve. Everyone's crazy. This is not good. It's just not good. So there are a couple big lessons that come from that as it relates to the audience here. Number one is that it happened to me. I was feeling the pressure myself. Number two is as I began to productize, not a word I made up, it's a term of art, but some folks are more or less familiar with the term. As I began to productize, I realized where my business was best, where I was best, and a pivot was needed in my business. So not only is this thing called productizing valuable, but I realized that, you know what, I don't think I'm serving my clients the best doing done-for-you marketing services. I'm better. I serve them better. So business coaching is what I'm better at. And now it's a word. 10 years ago, it wasn't really a thing people claimed, but whatever job I was in back when I was employable, that's what I was. I was a business coach. Call it what you like. Internal consultant, a strategic advisor, whatever you want to call it. That's what I was doing. And so I pivoted. I pivoted inside my own business. So then your direct question was, what am I seeing when I'm out there are reflections of what happened to me. And what does that look like very tactically? These are people who run service-based businesses. They're consultants in some way. They sell software. They sell done-for-you services. They sell advice. But they're having real trouble generating more business. Whatever business comes through their typical referral channels is great, but they cannot get one more client. They don't know where to get it from. And they talk like they do, bullcrap. They can't get the very next client. That's number one. The second thing is, quietly, the way they're currently operating is absolutely overwhelming. Now they put on their fancy suit and they make their videos. They look so polished, but behind the scenes, it is what they're feeling is this humongous weight of all the factorial number of details. So long answer to a short question, but I think that provides some context here on why we're talking and why this matters to me so much.
So what happened to you when it came to the idea of billable hours? Something changed for you there. Talk to us a little bit about that.
So billable hours stink. Can we just agree? Can we all agree? Billable hours stink. The whole idea of a billable hour stinks. So, but it's where most service providers begin with billing. And so if in that way, if you're kind of just getting started, I understand it. And sometimes the billable hour does make sense. But what happens, the pain point for all of us is at some point you've been paid by the hour and you are doing work that you're not being paid for. You billed for 4 hours of work. You billed for 10 hours of work. You billed for 20 hours of work. And at some point, you're still at your desk at 7 p.m., 8 p.m., 9 p.m. at night. And you are doing work that you have not billed for. You cannot charge for the work that you're doing. Or you're sitting with your feet kicked up on the television and you can't watch what you're watching because the thing is still in your mind. The client's work is still in your mind. You are working for them. You're not being paid for that. And so that's happened to me more than once. I have a variety of projects now that are flying through my brain here. But that's the core dynamic. So you begin to realize that not only does a billable hour not extend when to those off times, does a billable hour not extend when you do the hardcore math. What can you charge per hour? The most expensive consultant can charge what, $250? But even if you put $250 on a sheet of paper and you say, how much, when the client asks, how much do you charge? And you say $250 an hour, they are going to freak out on you. There's a corporate client I had some time ago, and he told me directly, he said, I have trouble justifying anything over $75 an hour to my, and I'm talking about a Fortune 500 company now.
Yeah.
So when bills come into them, if anybody's billed over $75 an hour, they start panicking. They start looking at that really, really hard. So, and most companies are not Fortune 500 companies, right? So you find that it's just an out of balance. The billable hour it doesn't work. It doesn't work for a business trying to grow.
So there's your problem. So what is the solution there then?
So the what a blog post will tell you is you sell on value. Right, that's what we say. You sell value instead. So, and I agree with that. By the way, I agree with that. But the door this opens up that I don't think we appreciate enough is that value is a subjective concept. What value is subjective. No matter when you bring it up, value is subjective. 1, 2. You don't define value. I don't define value.
Right.
Jason doesn't define value. The client defines value.
Mm-hmm.
Please don't marketing this to death, right? Don't turn ourselves into a bunch of slick marketers. At the end of the day, the client you serve determines the value of what you're doing. So then, your job as the expert, your job as the service company is to be honest and to be clear about what your client values. And if you really do that, what you find is that your client values things that you devalue. There are things that you go, I don't care about that. We do that in our sleep. And the client's going, that's amazing. That's amazing. I'm so glad you did that. You're going, so who cares? And you want to move on to the next thing. And they are loving the last thing that you've done. If we are less emotional about our business, we will turn our focus to that amazing thing that we just did. And we will center that in our business. We'll be like, you know what? We do the awesome thing. Yeah, we do some other stuff too, but the awesome thing we do is the stuff that you care about. Now, this is easier said than done. It's the kind of thing that, I don't know if we dialogue about it enough in the right way, but this idea of value is not defined by you, it's defined by the client. And so then if you're clear on what the client values, they will pay the appropriate dollar amount for that value. Now, that dollar amount could be 200 or 500 or 10,000, depending on what we're talking about. But they'll pay the appropriate amount so that you and your team can fully commit to the work, so that you don't find yourself cutting corners on things that you're not being paid for that end up hurting you and hurting the client over the long term. So if you heard all of what I just said that resonates with you, you really need to think again about what your client values most. Let that be a core service you offer, charge them for it, and do it at the highest possible level. That's fair. That's appropriate. That's the way this thing is supposed to happen.
Right. And I hope people picked up on the symptoms of what you talked about there, in that if you are penny pinching because you're going, oh no, I only have so many billable hours for this project, that is going to result in you trying to cut corners, like you said, and do the project as quickly as you can rather than as well as you can. And that's been a big thing for me over the years. I've been a sales trainer for a long time now, coming up to 8-9 years, and I teach people how to do those things. Find out what your prospect values instead of what you value. And as a copywriter for about 20 years now, over 20 years, I have found a parallel thing that goes on where when I'm about to write a sales letter or something and I do research, I find out that the stuff that I thought was important, the target market doesn't care.
That's right.
They value something completely different. And so if you write that way and you go with your gut, you're going to bomb. So that market research is so important. Let's talk a little bit more about these symptoms of these problems. How can people know that they're in that situation that you've been talking about?
Thank you for asking this question. This is a big deal, because what happens to me, and I'm sure it happens to you as well, Jason, is, and for most folks who are listening, what happens to us as advisors, consultants, etc., is the client comes to us when it's really bad. They come to us when both arms have been severed. They're wagging around like this. Blood is spewing everywhere, and they're saying, "Save me! I want to get back on the field." And you're like, "Back on the field, sir? You're missing arms. Like we have a different conversation now, because we got to keep you alive, let alone functional, right?" So there's a conversation of what do we talk about before it gets that bad, before we get to that place. So one is simply, you can't go home at night. So, when you work, if you work at an office still, it's 5 o'clock, you're still at work. 6 o'clock, you're still at work. 7 o'clock, you're still at work. 8 o'clock, you're still at work. Why are you still at work? Like, what job on the planet is that important where every night is an 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock? I'm sorry, unless you are in emergency services or you're protecting our country. It's practically. So this becomes, if your nights are extending, or if you work at the office, then you come home and here you are back with your computer, sitting in front of the computer, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night. Warnings, right? We're getting into those warning signs. Something that my clients tell me, and normally it takes a while to get here, but sooner or later we fess up. There is a family member has pulled your coattails. So the spouse says, wife or husband says, "Hey, can we? What are we doing for our birthday? My birthday, your birthday. What are we doing for our anniversary? What are we going to do this month? Where are we going to go out for dinner?" And you're thinking, "Oh, I forgot." And you do that whole thing because you've been inundated with the work you've been doing. So there are people. My point, or there are people in your life that love you, and they're not getting enough attention from you because you're giving it all to the business. And this stuff sounds very personal development until rubber meets the road. Until there's a moment where your daughter says, "Daddy, where have you been?" Or your son says, "Mommy, how come you can't play with me?" All this is conceptual and academic until you get that hard moment where you realize how separate you've been. So those are two, and then we go to the ones that are more traditional business. I'm having trouble closing new clients, and you're having trouble closing new clients because what you're offering is this could be a whole thing. So I might pause here so you can redirect me. But just to finish that thought, because what you're offering is too comprehensive. It's too customary. It's too custom, and so it's hard to explain all of what you do to someone who doesn't understand it, to a client who doesn't understand or really care. And so you find yourself having trouble closing deals. Now you're fully invested, you fully pitch, but when the client speaks back, they kind of give you the what face. You're like, and then you have that moment. So if you want to go deeper there, we can, but I'll pause so I don't go.
Sure.
I don't go too far down the
Frustration identification. We should dig into that, because I really want to get people into the headspace of it can be hard to get past the ego. And especially with prospects who want to present the image that they've got it all together and everything's great, and they're not walking around with the blood spurting out of their shoulders because their arms have been cut off and that. So anything that will help out consultants and coaches and that and other business owners, help their prospects identify that the danger of the situation they're really in. I talk about truth. The truth as being the highest value for my company. I don't care about honesty, because you can be honest and wrong.
Yeah.
The truth. I want to know the emperor has no clothes, right? So let's dig into that.
Okay. Let's talk about the ego, because the ego is very, very real, and the ego works both ways. Mm-hmm. So there's a place where you can get overconfident in who you are and what you do and what you have to offer. Then there's a place where you're scared to death and you don't want to admit it, and so you go down that path. And I know you've got narrative, you've got stories on both ends of that with the folks you work with. From at least from my perspective, what happens. These are because you asked, come up pain points. So when you know that you're kind of on the way to being out of control. So ego, consultants are used to being the smartest person in the room. If you've been doing something for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, you probably understand it pretty well. That's a fair assumption. And if you've been doing it that long, people have learned to count on you for your expertise and your experience, and the fact that you tried that thing before on some level. So you're used to being counted on in that way. And then if you're running this service-based business, you're used to getting in front of the client and being on stage. And presenting is being on stage. You got your slides, you got your suit, maybe you even got your team with you. We're doing the whole dog and pony show. That's being on stage. Then there's the literal on stage where it's you and there's 20, 30 people in the audience, and you're telling your stories on stage. Even being on the phone in a classic phone sales situation, on stage. These are things that are on stage where you're quote unquote the smart person, and you can be the smart person. There's nothing wrong with that. The trouble is when you're out of balance with that, and you're not listening the way you should be. So one of those things is when you give that 45-minute pitch, and you gave it to them. I mean, you did the whole song and dance. You told them about your background, your story. You did this, you did that, and you get that blank face back from the client. And anybody who's seen the blank face knows what I'm talking about. It is a stare into the distance, a blank stare. You receive nothing back. You missed something. That's the point. I want to just right there. You missed something. If you spent 45 minutes with someone and you didn't end up in a dialogue when you were done, if you did not have a dialogue, that you talk, they talk, you talk, they talk. Mm-hmm. You missed something. Let me say it another way. If you spent 45 minutes presenting whatever it is you have to offer, and you didn't learn anything, you broke it. You missed something. And there are symptoms that continue. This illness gets worse. It doesn't get better. So this is a sign, and other signs will happen. If you present for 45, what am I talking about? If you present for 45 minutes, you would talk to a client, a prospect for 45 minutes, and at some point in that interaction, the client should acknowledge what you're saying. At some point, they should go, "That's what I've been trying to get done." Mm-hmm. Yes. Or that's some version of that, however they communicate. But there should be some acknowledgement that what you're saying is on track. And if you never get that, then it was one way. It was a one-way thing. I'm telling you, warning, you are in trouble. So what happens in this, if we kind of play it out, so you see how this pain point leads to others. You pitch. Now, the backstory there is we don't just pitch on the first time talking to somebody. It took days, weeks, months to earn the right to pitch, right? So you've already sunk cost here. You've already had to spend to get here, time, money, energy, to get to this pitching opportunity. You pitch it 45 minutes, half a day sometimes, depending on the situation, right? You do all that, you don't get the dialogue, you don't get the sale, good people. If you don't have a dialogue, you don't get a sale. So then you don't close the client, right? So now you're mad. Now you're driving home, you've closed your computer, right? You're back on the plane, whatever your scenario is, and you're upset. So now you spent the 6 months, time spent, you did the pitch, no sale. Now you're emotional because you didn't get the sale, and you don't know why.
Mm-hmm.
So you're driving, you and your team, you talk to your wife, talk to your confidant, talk to your number two, however it works. Here you are kicking up dust and cursing and spitting because you didn't close the sale. And what's wrong with the client? They don't understand how good we are, how much we care. You're going through your whole song and dance. Okay. To close my little story down, when you go through all that, what does your next day at work look like? When you go through all that, you wake up the next morning and you go to work. Are you sharp? Are you Stephen Covey? Are you Seth Godin? Are you Gary Vaynerchuk that next day? Or are you Oscar the Grouch the next day? My team, bad proposal, more slides, more funnels. Or are you doing that thing? Right now, how many days do you carry that out until you can change it for the better? How long does this story last? How much longer do you extend your workday to make up for this bad thing I'm telling, right? So this is how a day goes from being 5 p.m. to 6 p.m., 7 p.m. You justify to yourself you're working hard. Okay, I'm not saying you aren't, but are you working hard at the right thing? Because you broke this 6 months ago. This thing you're working on today at 9 o'clock at night, you broke that a long time ago. So these are things that clients don't tell me this up front. It takes a while to get here, but I already know this story is happening. This is what's happening to you. And then you get to the end, right? You've had this ugly moment in your life, either business or life, and now we're all looking for the magic way to dig ourselves out of it. But really, and Jason, you know this because you've seen a lot of my content. We've dialogued on some of this already. What I'm describing here is an attitude shift. What I'm describing is a fundamental shift in how you're thinking. And if you'll change how you're thinking, all of that work now makes sense. The 6 months, if it takes 6 months to earn the right to pitch, you're okay with that. When you have the 45-minute dialogue with the client, you're okay with that. You're having the right kind of dialogue. Whether you get the client or not, you're okay with that because you know what to take from it so that your next day at work is a more productive day. I believe the concept of productizing shifts everything I just said. It turns everything from being a grind to being efficient. This one concept shifts it. But I'm here to tell you there's a lot you've got to do on your end as the expert in the room to change your attitude so that productizing makes sense so that you can make all this other heavy lifting make sense.
Awesome. You said something earlier, Alzay, about you didn't want the scope of the project to fix too many things.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you?
Right. That's a leading question because he knows I got a whole thing about that. Right. Thank you, Jason. So I can speak as simply and practically as I can. We already made the point about value. The client values what they value. So once you've satisfied the hunger, once you've quenched the thirst, you're done. You've done the work. So if you've if a single plate of food would have done, but you offer them a buffet, that's the buffet's wasted food, man. The single plate of food got the work done. So as consultants, we know all this stuff. We have all these complex services we can offer, and we want to kind of shove it all down clients' throat because they need it all. You've overfed them, and they fundamentally don't value the back end or the other stuff because you really got it done in the beginning, right? In the front. So there's one reason. Another reason, hidden, we don't talk about it, but it's very, very true. If you're going to offer 8, 9, 10 different services, you have to have the internal capacity
Mm-hmm.
to offer 8, 9, 10 different services. So that means you need 3 guys to do this thing, 2 guys to do that thing, you need a team to do this, you got to have triage meetings to handle this. There is an entire, you got to carry around all those tools just in case you might need one. And you'll use it once this year, but you got to hire the guy because you got to have him in case you might need him. So you pay the guy all year long, pay the lady all year long because you just might need them. You got software tools sitting in your business, right, that are hooked up to, my gosh, we know how software can be. It can be a mess, hooked up to hooked up to hooked up to hooked up. And you're paying the annual fee because it's what they said you should buy, but you don't use it. Or that software tool could be a sheet of paper, but you don't use paper because paper's boring. So you got the software tool because you can click things and slide them around. But then you got to have people to support the tool, right? And yada yada yada. So you end up with, frankly, a bloated business. You end up carrying around costs. This is like companies. This is like physical product companies that carry too much inventory. You know, the money is tied up in the stuff you got in the warehouse. No one's buying it, but you got inventory in the warehouse. This is it's a very similar dynamic inside a service-based business. You got inventory. You got stuff you're not using, just sitting in the back. And that money, that time, that energy could certainly be used to do something else. So, you know, we can go further if we like, but those two things I think highlight why. Actually, wait, there's one more important part of this. How did you get into being a full service agency in the first place? Who said it was smart in the first place? Because because doing everything for the client on its face sounds very smart. Don't worry, client, we can do it all. That sounds so smart. But if we can go one notch into that, if we're honest, you can't do it all. If we're honest, just me talking to you, you talking to me. Right now, I can't see you because you're listening. You're watching right now. I can't see you. But if we're honest with one another, you can't do it all. There are things that you just don't do well. So what happens is you tell a client you can do it all 45 pieces. Then you get to part 35, 36, and all of a sudden it's not as strong. And then the project begins to break down. And sooner or later, that broken project, whose fault is it? It's yours. The client comes back to you, it broke, you did 35 things well. And now here you are being nitpicked on the last 7 or 8. And you're upset, you're bothered. But see, because you promised things that were outside of your ability. So again, another long answer, but these are the things that weigh on people. No one talks about them. And it's not until it's really, really bad you go looking for help. And sometimes you find, sometimes you can't be helped. And yuck.
Sometimes the answer is yuck. What can a consultant do who recognizes that they're in that situation where they've tried to be the equivalent of the landscape person who not only mows lawns but repairs chimneys and cleans your gutters and washes your windows and, you know, doesn't, like you said, do one of those things that great, let's say, but they offer it. But then it has the realization that, okay, I do need to make that attitude shift here and not like shrink down, but focus.
Yeah.
How can they make the decision about what to cut and what to keep?
Yeah. Okay. So the word here is focus. When you start talking like this, people hear they hear a loss of opportunity, because if I can, and that is the number one objection, if you will, right? If we're talking sales, that's the number one objection I get when clients want to work with me. Is that there's this feeling of, if I can do 5 things and I choose to only do 4, that I'm losing the money on number 5. And I understand that. I acknowledge that. And I can't fix that. That's not a thing to be fixed. I think it's a thing to be honest about. So if you got 5 things, I'm asking you where the money's coming from. What are you being paid for? If I take away thing number 5, are you still being paid? Okay, if I take away thing number 4, you still being paid. So we can keep going down this list, right? If I keep going, when do you stop getting paid? So if we go here and we go here, and you go, wait, Alzay, if I take that away, they won't pay us. Cool, that stays, and then we can continue. This doesn't work. The truth, Jason, this doesn't work without the truth. We've got to be honest about what we're doing well, and this doesn't have to be a sense where we lose anything, but it is an honest conversation where, again, it could be you and a consultant, you and a coach. It can be you and your team, you and your number one, you and your partner in crime, so to speak, you and your partners, and you're having the honest conversation about, when we get paid, what are they really paying us for? And I think for um, for most people, the clients that I work with, there's a bit of a shock here because you don't know.
Right.
You really don't know.
Yes, I absolutely agree. It's like, how do you know what's profitable for you? And so what do you do then? Do you have to go back and interview your clients and past clients and say, what did you really find valuable?
Yeah, I think that is one practical way of doing it. Is seriously getting, and when we say interview your clients, we're not talking about this overly structured business thing. We're humans having real conversation, which, by the way, is a incredibly powerful tool that, that'll be interview number 2. But the value of conversations, it is the goals you're after. But most folks do a terrible job having conversations, and that's why the other things don't happen well. Whole thing, not right now. You asked the question. Let's stay here. So, um, interviewing your clients is simply a matter of, hey, we've been working with you guys for the last 6 months. We've been working with you guys for the last 6 hours. Working with you guys for the last 2 weeks. And I got to tell you, I'm too close to what we do. So I'm asking you honestly, why'd you choose to work with us? Okay, we've done these 4 deliverables at this point. Which is your favorite? Why? Let them tell you. Let them tell you. And if you'll get your ego, if you'll kind of scrub your ego for a moment and put it to the side, they'll flat out tell you, man. It's amazing what people will just come out and tell you if you ask them honestly. If you put that sales junk in there, you won't get an honest answer. I feel manipulated. But if you just let me, if you let me tell you how I'm feeling about what you've offered me, what you're doing for me, I'll tell you the truth, and it won't take long to get to the truth you're after. So I'm just seriously asking past clients, current clients will take you a long way. If you choose not to go that route, if you can't go that route, another practical way of doing that. I have my clients in our coaching work. There's an exercise we go through, and there's a grid that we come up with. It's a very academic way of separating projects that you've been on. And it forces you, this exercise forces you to remind yourself of the best work you've done. And so when you remind yourself, oh, that client, oh, that thing, right? And when you get there, you stay there. We want to recreate that client. Sometimes it's one big project, you got to cut it in half. I loved the beginning, hated the end, or vice versa. I hated the beginning, loved the end. Okay, great. So the part that we remember, oh, we did that work for them, and that was really good. That was really good. Let's repeat that. How do we repeat that? But again, what you find from that may be different than what your ego wants to continue. You may find that your ego tells you something else is important. So you got to be okay with what the data gives you. But man, I think we all agree, if you're in the service business of being in service to others, we all love the smile on our client's face. When we've done something good and that client goes, man, thank you so much. We couldn't have done this without you. If that's the result you're after, then let's do the tasks that get us to that result, so we can satisfy them or we can satisfy us. Now that's which you can do either one you want, but it's more profitable to satisfy them. Your choice.
Right, and it sounds so simple. Oh, just ask your clients and your past clients. Nobody does it.
Nobody does it.
And I don't know why. It is easy to do. I wouldn't do it by email. And what you said about forgetting, about the best projects you've done. I totally identify with that. It happens to me all the time. I'll suddenly remember something I did 3 years ago or 10 years ago, or even a job that I had.
That's right.
In the early 2000s, and I'll go, oh my gosh, I completely forgot that happened there. I had that experience, and there's expertise and value there that's waiting to be mined, that we've just utterly forgotten about. So that I'm imagining like a 2x2 graph or something like that, quadrants of what you were talking about. Let's dig into scope creep for a moment, and then I think we'll wrap up, because we've definitely, I'm sure, piqued a lot of imagination here, and as you said, do have room for another discussion, which I would love to have. Scope creep is a kind of a weird thing. You mentioned it before, like you touch it, you buy it. You own it, right? If you do part 62 in your consulting project, then that may not be the best thing that you do, and you break it, you own it, and they're going to come and complain at you about that. And who cares about the other 61 things that you did right? How does scope creep happen for regular consultants who haven't productized their business, and what can they do about it?
Yeah. Okay. So I think there are a couple of dynamics at play. Here's the, if I can get it down to one idea, the wrong person is in control of the project. That's how scope creep happens. The wrong person is in control of the project. Alzay, who should be in control of the project? The expert should be in control of the project. If you are volunteering for surgery, you submit yourself to the doctor. Doctor, I am sick, make me well. That's what happens, right? He is the expert, she is the expert. We are going in for surgery. Okay. So if your client is working with you, you are the surgeon, you are the doctor. It is up to you to determine how this surgery needs to unfold. And if you ask the client what they think, or the patient, what they think they want out of surgery, they will tell you terrible things because they don't know medicine and they'll hurt themselves, right? So, and if that analogy doesn't work for you, right? They are the child and you are the parent. And there's nothing wrong with the child. But if you ask the child what they want for dinner, they will tell you candy, pizza, and candy. Now, as the adult, you know better. You know that pizza and candy forever will kill you. Not a good idea. Okay. So then your responsibility as the parent is to give the child what they need in order to grow. Now, someone just got offended because I'm not a parent, I'm not a child, and you missed the point. Okay. The essence here is, if you are the expert in the room, you are the leader in the room, and they are following your leadership. And when you allow that fundamental to break, it's your fault. We cannot blame the client for not knowing what to do. If the client knew what to do, they would have done it without you. They came to you because they need your leadership. So use whatever analogy you like. When you break that rule, it's broken. Okay. And then madness ensues, and no one's happy. Whose fault is that? Okay. So how does it happen? So where can that rule be broken in the typical process? Many times the breakdown begins with the custom proposal process, the way you engage with the client in the first place. And for most consulting firms, if you used to work for an agency, used to work for a firm, and now you're starting your own, this is how you do it. The custom proposal RFP thing is simply how you do it. It's a whole song and dance. Won't explain it. I'm assuming you've already gone through that on some level if you're listening right now. So you do custom proposal. The problem with that, how does it break the rule? The client is asking you for what they want. The client is saying, we have an issue in our business. We'd like it resolved. Please describe to us how you think you would resolve it. If the client understood their issue well, they wouldn't need you. You don't go to the dentist when you understand what's going on with your tooth. You ask him, I hurt, help me understand. Should my tooth be removed or repaired? I can't see it. I don't understand it. I need you to tell me. But if the patient goes to the dentist and says, please remove my tooth, no dentist does that under ethically. No dentist just says, yes, okay, sure, and just yanks your tooth out. There's always the analysis that happens, right? Right. So this whole custom proposal thing has the client in control of the project. They're telling you what they think they want, and they're defining the terms of how it's delivered. and they're determining the price they want to pay for that. If they could do all that, they would have done it already. Okay, so that broken model. Then once you get into the actual delivering of the service, once you get into the service, the client always makes one-off asks. Always. Right? I got it. Hey, there's a guy, he wasn't in the first meeting. Can I bring him to the second meeting? He's got a couple of ideas. Hey, I've been thinking that, hey, can you add a color, red, yellow, blue? Hey, can we do this page 4 different ways? Hey, that thing you submitted, it was really nice, but I'd love it if it worked this way instead. You mind making that change for me? No big deal, right? Okay. Those, and then sometimes those asks are well intended. They don't mean to break the project. But what they're doing is they're making recommendations on how surgery is done. A surgeon would never accept, you would never even think of doing that with a surgeon. You'd never go to the surgeon and recommend how to do. You'd never do that. You'd never do it. But it happens to us all the time. So now here we are, the one-off ask. If you take the first ask, there's a second and a third and a ninth and a 22nd. So here you are with all these additional asks that have now been inside the project. Hey, everybody, how many times are you compensated for the additional ask? How many times is the ask made and a budget comes with it? Hey guys, hey, I'm asking you to make this change, and we're going to put $5,000 on this change. How often does that happen? And by how often, I mean never, or just about never, right? Like that's just not how it goes. The assumption is you can lump this additional ask in with what you're already doing. Since you're already at work, go ahead and do this too. And again, eventually that extends into a project that's very different than what you signed up for. It's very different than what you've been paid for. And it could be very different than from what you optimized for. As a company, you're very good at blank, but now you're doing blank 2, 3, 4. You're not good at 2, 3, 4. You're good at blank. So those are simple places where, and those, customer proposal, many spots in there where scope creep can happen. Inside the arrangement, especially the longer the arrangement, the more chances to do these things. So let me paint a different picture while we're in this moment. There is a way of doing business where you can tell the client up front what they're going to get. Client, it's a pleasure meeting you today. Tell me about what you've got going on. 1, 2, and 3. Got it. I understand that. We can solve for 1, 2, and 3. Here's how we do it. It's already organized. We do it this way. We do it this way, method. We do it under this time frame. We do it at this price figure. If you want to solve 1, 2, and 3, we can start that right now. What do you say? Most consulting firms can't make that proposition.
Right.
They have to go through 4 more conversations. Scope creep. There it is. A custom proposal. But the ability to hear that problem, hear it, confirm it, and then immediately start work on it is such a sexy proposition. You just save everybody time. I don't have to go talk to nine other vendors. I don't have to think about this for 20 more weeks. And internally in your company, same thing. You don't have to go chase 9 more clients or think about it for 20 more weeks. Okay? There. So then once you're inside the actual service, you're delivering the actual service. We all know what we're getting now. So now we know that we can't make one-off asks. I agreed to a scope of work already. I agreed to it. We're moving. It's happening. So any one-off work I request interrupts my speed to the goal. I already know that as a client. I agreed I want to get here under this time frame. So if I make a one-off ask, I'm breaking it. Why would I want to do that? So this simple idea of productizing changes both dynamics. I say it's 100 times. I'm saying it now for 101. If you make the choice to productize, if you make the choice to productize, sales is faster, delivery is faster, sales is easier, delivery is easier. The price point of sales goes up, and so does the satisfaction of the client. It's a fundamentally better way of doing business if you'll make the brain shift. So that there's your challenge, right?
Right. Well, I love what that commitment brings you, though. It just seems to change the behavior of everyone involved, and all for the better. So, Alzay, how can people get a hold of you And
Yes,
they
sir.
should.
I appreciate that. Website is www.covetedconsultant.com. I have a YouTube channel where I had this conversation every day. I think it really is a game changer. So I think it's really, really important, as you can hear. So YouTube channel is the same name, Coveted Consultant. You can type that in the search bar, and the channel comes up. Um, I've got plenty of information. If you're interested in doing work with me, it's not hard to figure out how to do that. But I think the content will come first. So whether you go to the website or you go to the YouTube channel, you can get what you need.
Right. Yeah. And as I said at the beginning of this whole thing, that's how I found Alzay, and I highly recommend that content. I go back there every so often. I don't know, probably every 6 weeks, I find myself back in there reviewing something. There was a time when I watched everything from A to Z.
Yeah, I appreciate
I
that.
started at the very beginning, watched those early videos, and then you kind of hit your stride on a certain format, and it's gone on from there. So thanks a lot for being here, Alzay. Appreciate it. My guest today has been Alzay Calhoun, Coveted Consultant.